Okay, Michael, we are live. You may begin whenever you're ready.
Awesome. Welcome everybody to March 15th, 2022, full design review board meeting. I call to order, and we do have a quorum of 5 members.
We're live.
And we will get started here. I'm looking for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll move to,
We have a motion to approve.
yes.
I'll second.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Do we have any meeting minutes, staff, to approve?
Yes, we have February 15th, February 22nd, and March 1st meeting minutes to approve.
I hear a motion to approve February 15th, February 22nd, and March 1st.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All right, motion passes. All right, moving on to members' comments. Is there anybody on that has a general member comment about anything that does not regard to any application that is on the agenda tonight? Okay, then we will get started with tonight's agenda. So up first, we have 2360 Tumbletree Way. We have an appeal for this application. And just to remind the appellants, you have to provide that there is new information or a design guideline was misapplied. And then if we accept the appeal, then we would hear the application de novo, which basically just means we will hear it over again. We have a couple appeals tonight, so just kind of keep those rules in mind. The applicant will not get a chance to speak unless the appeal is granted. Sometimes there's some confusion there. The appellant has the floor to start, and if we accept the appeal, then we will move to the applicant. All right, getting started with 2360 Tumbletree Way.
Asking
Or is
the appellant is present, Mr. Small.
Good evening, everyone. I am Glenn Small, and I will be speaking for myself and my wife as 14-year residents of 2362 Tumbletree Way. Kim wanted to be here tonight, but due to the scheduling, she's not able to. We did request this appeal, and we do have material that shows new information and a misapplied guideline. I'd like to go over that with you in a moment. I'm speaking tonight as a resident, an RA member, and an affected party. I'm also currently a candidate for the RA board, but that is totally separate from this matter. As you all well know, the DRB is independent anyway, and the RA board has no influence over what you do or how you do it. Even if I was already on the board, I do have a right to speak as a resident, a member, and as an affected property owner. We do respect this process and have only ever wanted to make sure the process was being followed correctly, openly, and fairly. This project is not a simple addition, and it deserves to have extra scrutiny. Measure twice, cut once. Because if it gets built as is, it will have a long-lasting impact, not just on our neighborhood and our street, but all of Reston. So we do thank you for accepting our appeal that we know you didn't have to do that. We and other neighbors have asked the applicants to scale the project down, and they have responded with minimal changes. There has been a false impression that those minimal changes, changing the roof pitch and clipping off the corner of the roof, greatly reduces the size and scale of this. And that's simply not true. A case like this should be handled with extra care, including listening to the concerns of affected parties. But while we know how hard you guys work, we know the amount of detail you go through, you may feel that that's what you've done in this case. That is not what we and others have experienced. The first meeting on October 19th left the impression that this project was on the fast track to approval and nothing was going to stop it. At that time, only a few people even knew about it. When the neighborhood was alerted, many submitted written statements and showed up to express their concerns. Ultimately, those concerns appeared to be ignored or disregarded. A supposed two-scale drawing introduced via Zoom during that meeting led to a conclusion that the project had been significantly scaled back and led to another approval. Now, here we are, the only ones really speaking up about those many concerns that you've heard, both orally and writing. And it's not because those other neighbors with concerns don't care anymore, or that they feel like their concerns are truly heard and addressed. No, it's because they feel this project was going to get approved no matter what. They are discouraged and disgruntled. The applicants have been tone deaf to the neighbor concerns and have refused to consider any real changes to their plans. Presumably, the reason for this project is because of an ailing parent who moved in during COVID, and they need more room for her, and they need special accommodations. For anyone who has dealt with elder care, and we all will eventually, one way or another, this situation evokes deep sympathy and great empathy. We have our own story of an ailing grandmother. The elephant in the room has been this massive project is overkill to solve the problem of providing more living space for an aging parent. If you continue to approve it as is without substantial reductions in size, the project will dramatically change our street by inserting a McMansion into a tight space between two smaller homes and alter the character of the settled, stable neighborhood. One of Reston's core values is to be a place for everyone and to have a mix of housing that ranges from the highest end to the most affordable. This project goes against that core value by raising the already high prices in a more modest single-family neighborhood. So we urge you to take a step back, reconsider, especially to get it right by applying all of the relevant guidelines. That brings me to our material and our first point, not applying the tear down infill guideline. And I'm hoping someone can go to the label, the exhibit labeled FB. If you go, please go to the first page. Okay, so there's 4 points we want to cover here, and I just go over them quickly. You've had a chance to review them, so I'm not going to belabor it. If you go to the next slide, please. Okay, in this case, only the addition alteration guideline was applied, and the tear down infill guideline should also be applied. This was brought up in January, and the DRB seemed to not address the point head on. It does say a tear down applies when it's demolishing and clearing approximately 25% or more of an existing single family detached house. I'm quoting in that orange from an actual guideline. If you could stay on that page for a minute. I don't know who's switching the screen around, but if you could hold there for a second. So if you look at the house and you look at the plans, the whole right side of the house, the entire roof and the back of the house is going to be demolished to put on the whole new roof. That right side of the house is about 2/3 of the size of the house. So it clearly involves 25% or more of the house. So it should be applied, or I'd like you guys to explain why it doesn't apply or what calculation that you came up with that's less than 25%. And I'll stop there.
I'm sorry, but the DRB doesn't typically answer questions to affected parties or appellants. So this is just your opportunity to explain why you are appealing the application.
Okay, Cam, thank you. So I just would like someone before this ends tonight to explain what was your calculation, how you did it, if you say it's not 25% or more. Okay, if you go to the next slide. So if this guideline was properly applied, there's a bunch of other things that would come into play that were not put into play. But ultimately, this has to harmoniously relate and visually integrate with the prevailing character of the neighborhood. And there's other specific things we could go into, but until it's clear that that guideline is being applied, I think we can move on to the next slide. There's a couple more points here. Okay, on the right, this is the 2-scale drawing that was introduced in November, and it's kind of from above and from the right, and it's kind of making it look like the new house is the same size as the house on the right or the same height. But we had an architect do a straight on rendering, and you can see from this that this new larger house is significantly larger, and our whole right side of our house is now going to be blocked from sunlight and trees. So this is the new information that I was referring to. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so there's, and I referred to this before, but there's this inference, so there was actually a statement made by one of you that by clipping the roof or changing the pitch from 712 to 512 and creating that jerkin head on the right, that significantly reduced the size, scale, and massing. And again, if we look to the next slide, these are 3D renderings based on their submitted plans that really truly show the size and massing of this. And then also, if we could go to the next slide, please. Okay, so you can see the outline of the existing house and the picture on the right and how much bigger this house is, the number of roofs, how big it is, and also in the back. And then if you look at the size of this lot, it's a long, narrow lot. And even one of the members back in October said, this looks like you're trying to shoehorn this into a lot, and we agree. So that's another new information for you to consider. This really shows how big this really is. Okay, next slide, please. And this might be my last point. The DRB did recommend that the chimney be taken down because of it's going to look dinky on the new house. And I just want to point out that according to their own designs and the plans that were approved by Fairfax County, that dotted dark line shows this limit of disturbance where you're not supposed to go outside of that line. And the chimney is outside of that line. And there's a lot of trees all around that chimney that needs to be addressed, how they're going to do that without violating that limit of disturbance. This is kind of a more minor point, but it's one that I wanted to bring up. And then the last picture or the last slide shows, this is the other new information, what it actually looks like. Oh, that's funny. Okay, so that picture somehow is not rendering. Oh, here it comes. Just got it. Looks like it's whoever's computer has got memory issues. And it's in the material, so that you guys can look at it. But that's showing the left-hand corner of their house, facing from the side and the back, showing where the chimney is in relation to two trees, and and again, both of those are outside the limit of disturbance. So this would need to be addressed at some point, either by restoring the chimney or getting some sort of plan from the county on how you're going to work on that limit of disturbance. So just really would urge everyone to take a step back and really reconsider this and look at all the new information and all the other facts that have been presented. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Small. All right, let me go around the DRB board and see if anyone has any questions, and then we will have a discussion. Mike B, do you have any questions for the appellant?
No, sir, Mr. Wood. Thank you.
All right. Jim, did you have any questions for the appellant?
I do not.
Okay. Karen, did you have any questions for the appellant?
No, thank you.
Bruce, did you have any questions for the appellant?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, then let's have some discussion between us. Mike B, do you have any thoughts on the appeal?
Yeah, I appreciated the additional renderings, but I don't think for my 2 cents, I don't think we have any material changes to, what we understood the project to be. I don't see this as new information. I don't particularly see, for my own, that there would be a reason for us to move forward accepting the appeal at this juncture.
Okay.
In terms of the discussion with regard to tear down, there is a bunch of demolition to the existing structure in order to get this done. I don't disagree with that. But it's not as though we're removing, the entirety of, or a massive percentage of it. The entirety of it's not razed to the ground, if I'm not mistaken. Components of the existing structure are remaining. But Anyway, my point being, I don't think we've seen a big material shift from what we understood when we reviewed this last. So
Okay. Jim, did you have any thoughts on the appeal?
No, I don't have any questions.
Karen, do you have any thoughts?
No.
Bruce, anything?
No, my thinking is I'm similar to Michael's.
Yeah, just to address Mr. Smalls about the tear down infill, I think that guideline it's a tough one because you could argue the opposite, that they're just building additions over top of the existing house here, versus it they're not actually tearing it down. I think that's more what that guideline is supposed to be. But even if we said that guideline wasn't or was applicable, we still take into all the same context of whether we're applying whether the house is harmonious with the surrounding area and what's the disturbance level to trees, how does it fit into the existing neighborhood, et cetera. And I think all those issues were considered. So also with the chimney situation, I don't feel that the limit of disturbances for when there's going to be a foundation kind of poured, they're actually going to be just putting up scaffolding to take that chimney down. There's not going to be massive cranes or anything going in for that. They're going to put up some scaffolding that'll have a couple feet on the ground and be able to take that thing down from the top down. So I don't think that that's going to impact those trees. So with that said, does anyone have a thought on the appeal, a motion to make?
I would make a motion to deny the appeal.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of denying the appeal, say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? Karen, I don't think I heard your vote. Did you say
No,
aye?
I did.
Okay. I just didn't hear you. Okay, motion passes to deny the appeal 5-0. All right, thank you, sir. All right, moving on to application G, which is 11950 Sentinel Way. I can't see the street name. Yeah, Sentinel Point Court. Sorry, excuse me on that. So this is also an appeal. Is Allison or Brian Rome on?
Yes, they are. We're asking them to unmute. Allison, you're unmuted.
Yep. Yeah, I unmuted. I was waiting for you all to let me do that. Okay.
Great.
Thank you for hearing our appeal tonight. As we were going through your website about the design review board and how you all come up with your criteria, the criteria says that the continued physical vitality of neighboring neighborhoods in order to enhance property value for all residents, and you look at the effect of the neighboring properties, the proposed changes should be compatible with the neighborhood's overall architecture, site design, landscaping, topography, and existing characters, accommodations of access, sunlight, ventilation, view, etc., and pedestrian traffic, and the privacy and normal use of neighboring properties are primary considerations. We believe that neither of these points were taken into consideration when making the decision to approve the project. The building of the fence will greatly impact the property value for the strip of townhouses next to Ms. Daly's, as there will be no access from the rear to the cluster common property. Additionally, the proposed changes did not consider the impact of the normal use of neighboring properties. No neighbor should be able to block use of cluster property from another neighbor. Your approval of the application does as such. This is also a safety issue. And that's one thing that I've read through all of the design review board guidelines is nothing looks at safety. And I think safety really needs to be taken into consideration in this. We have no issues with the fence being built. And let me make that very clear. We have no issues with the fence being built. We have issues where the fence placement will be built, because where it will be built at this point is a safety hazard. And what we've asked is that as part of the appeal is for it to go to no further than the party fence, or because there's such erosion back there, the DRB give the cluster board the ability to deal with the erosion issue, making it safer to get to common cluster property. And, before anything can move forward with this project, we do ask that someone from the design review board go back there and see, because going up to the property line, as was stated by the applicant, it will leave absolutely no ability to get back there in case of an emergency. We do not want to use that property. We've never said we want to use the property. We do want a safe way to exit in case of an emergency, and we do not want to be blocked from getting to cluster property. So we ask that this appeal be granted, and further investigation into how this could be resolved, whether it is to move where the fence ends, or work with the cluster, who we've been told a number of times by resident association and the design review board, this is a cluster issue, not a resident association issue, that the cluster has time to deal with it, because if the fence is built, the cluster will never be able to get back there in order to take care of the erosion problem, which makes it unsafe to get to cluster property.
Great, thank you. All right, let me go around and see if anyone has any questions for you, ma'am, and then we'll come back, okay? Mike B, did you have any questions for the appellant?
I don't have any questions. I saw this one previously, so I'm up to speed.
Jim, did you have any questions for the?
I don't have any
appellant?
questions.
Okay, Karen, did you have any questions for the appellant?
No, I also think so.
Okay, Bruce, did you have any questions for the appellant? Bruce, did you have anything, sir?
I'm sorry, no, I do not.
Okay. And I don't have any questions right now. I do have a question for staff. So since this is an appeal, I believe, so Mike and Karen cannot vote on the appeal since they heard the application?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay. So let's go around the room and see if anyone has any questions or discussion items that they'd like to talk about with this. Mike, is there anything? I know you can't vote on the appeal, but you can discuss about it.
There's nothing new. Yeah, there's nothing new here, Michael.
Okay.
I mean, there's nothing new here, Michael. I mean,
okay.
This is an individual who wants to build a fence on their private property. I mean, that's the end of the discussion.
And it meets all cluster standards from what I can see. It's all within their property line.
Yep.
Okay. Jim, did you have any thoughts on this?
No.
Okay. Karen, you agree with Mike about the assessment of the existing information?
Yes.
Okay. Bruce, any thoughts?
No, what I would understand is that it's within the guidelines. So the question is there any new facts that suggest that the guidelines was misapplied? It was misapplied, or there's new facts, and I'm hearing that there are none.
Okay. Well, with that said, does anyone have a motion they would like to make?
I'd move to deny the appeal.
We have a motion to deny. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, so we'll take a vote. Just remember, Mike and Karen, you guys cannot vote. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
So Mike and Karen both abstain. All right, so the motion passes 3-0-2, that the appeal is denied. And we are moving on. All right, to another appeal for 11315 Stones Throw Road. And staff, walk me through this. I think there's multiple appeals. Is that how I read the application or the appeals correctly?
That is correct. We do have multiple appeals, 2 from affected parties and 1 from the applicant. And it starts off with the first appeal from Chris about the fence. The second appeal is Kim and Glenn Finch about the pool equipment. And then Dr. Tesserant appealing the fence decision. So if you accept, if one appeal is accepted, all of those items could be discussed underneath that.
But do we hear from all 3 appellants first?
You could hear one appeal and then choose to hear all of the arguments if the appeal is accepted. If one appeal is denied, then you can move on to the next one.
Right. I guess what I worry, I think Tony's going to weigh in. Can you guys, Tony, you're there?
Yeah. So normally when we do this is we do, you hear the first appeal, if it's granted, then it's already de novo. You don't need to hear the other appeals. So you take them.
But what if we want to hear from that appellant to why they're appealing?
Well, presumably it's a binary equation. You take your first appeal, you're either going to grant it or deny it. If you grant it, the person that was making the other appeals would be able to speak as an affected party anyways.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. All right. Okay. So we'll hear from the first appellant, who's an affected party. So who exactly is that? That's going to be
We have Chris and Claire. If you are here, could you please raise your hand? I don't see them. Oh, Dr. Tesserant, one moment. Chris and Claire will be first if they're present. I don't see anyone raising their hand. Okay, we can go to the next appellant, which would be Kim and Glenn Finch.
Sorry, that's not accurate. Chris submitted their appeal first, and the DRB can review appeals without the appellant present. So if the DRB finds that the appellant's information is sufficient, you can accept it or deny it and move on to the next appeal.
All right. Does staff want to present what the appeal is, or am I supposed to just read it out loud? Or
assuming that the DRB has reviewed the appeal, it appears that the information that the appellant has provided as new information. The DRB did not consider that their property is located to the rear of the 2 properties, the Tisserand and Allman properties. They share a metal ornamental fence, and the gate currently allows access to the Tisserand property. Their preference is that the gate will continue to directly access the Tisserand property. This would not be the case if the fence were installed based on the DRB plan. And this would be the aforementioned existing fence is their fence as it currently is laid out. So they would prefer the fence is installed closer to the property line with 11303 Stones Throw Drive to adjoin the fence to the left when facing their fencing gate from the Tisserand property towards their gate. This would allow us to continue to directly access the Tisserand property via the gate, and they would prefer if the Tisserand family could install the ornamental fence approximately 1 foot from the property line with 11303 Stones Throw Drive.
okay. All right.
Just for clarification, are we talking about the rear property?
That is correct.
Okay, because we did, consideration that the rear fence was, the existing fence was there was definitely part of our decision. If that's
Yes.
in fact, we definitely were aware of that fence back there. And in fact, that was one of the deciding factors, that there was an existing privacy fence. Excuse me, an existing ornamental fence.
Yeah.
And it looks like
So-
Chris joined.
So, does anyone have any, so Bruce has kind of his thoughts. I mean, I agree. We knew that fence existed. That's the only reason really why we were considering an ornamental fence to be going anywhere near the property line. I mean, typically our guidelines say that these are supposed to enclose more of a confined area. So I don't really think there's any new information. Mike B, did you have any thoughts?
No, you guys just nailed it. This was tying into, and yeah, nothing new here for me.
Karen, did you have any thoughts on the appeal?
This is probably, I mean, it's probably out of line, but when you look at the Tisserand proposal, he wants to put the fence within a foot of the property line, which would automatically create what this person is asking for.
Correct.
So I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I guess what's tough is, I mean, we knew that other fence was there. I think we were avoiding making the connection because there's a drainage swale that this would kind of have to go over top of. And it felt like it just made more sense to step it back. There also was an affected party to the side of the home that this fence was going up against, that this would kind of maintain that 6 foot recommended setback that we have for fences on majority of that shared property line. I feel like if we consider that, we would then need to have the affected party for the shared fence kind of be brought back kind of to the table, because they would need to kind of be up to date that this is now going forward. I don't see any new information though. That's the tricky part, and that's what I think we need to decide. Jim, did you see any new information or misapplied guideline?
No, I think when the setback was sketched out, I thought, Michael, it was by you previously, that this whole issue was addressed, and I'm not seeing anything new.
Okay. Does anyone want to make a motion then on the appeal?
Make a motion to deny the appeal.
All right, we have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
All right. Any further discussion? I just have one question for staff. Everybody can vote on this appeal? Because this was a full board matter, right?
That is correct. Everyone, all members can vote.
Okay. All those in favor of denying the appeal, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? Karen, I don't think I heard you vote. I missed that.
No, I don't really quite understand how we're getting to where we might want to be for all of it. So anyway,
Do you want to abstain then?
yeah.
Okay. All right. So the motion to deny the appeal passes 4-0-1. We'll move on to the next appeal. Is that appellant on?
Yes. Glenn and Kim Finch. We're asking her to unmute.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Glenn Finch. My wife Kim is next to me. Our appeal is quite simple. This isn't what we submitted, but if you could pull our document up, it's down there in a minute. Our appeal is quite simple. We don't want to see or hear Dr. Tisserand's pool equipment. At the last board meeting, the board voted to put the pool equipment on the side of the house with line of sight and hearing remedy to be 4-foot skip laurels. Our issue, we respect the board's decision to as far as the placement of the pool equipment. Our issue is with the line of sight and sound, with the skip laurels and two pieces of new information. So LaShonda, if you could pull our document up, we'd sure appreciate it. It's in that same package. Perfect. If you can scroll down some, please.
That was the rule.
Yeah, so that's the ruling, which I'm sure the board is aware of, and there are these two artist renderings that that made it appear very, very easy to install the 5x8 pad and the skip laurels to the left. That's the picture on the left. If you'd scroll to the next page, please. The issue is in those renderings, this large deciduous tree, if you could scroll down just a little bit more, large deciduous tree was not taken into consideration. So, you know, with the way that artist rendering was, everything to the left was open. We don't know how it's possible to put a 5x8 pad in there with 2 foot of space to the foundation and 3 or 4 foot of space to the skip laurels. Secondarily, the issue is if those skip laurels are planted, we're afraid that they're going to die because they're covered up by the deciduous tree. And if they die, they're going to look like the skip laurels that are on the next page. In Dr. Tisserand's front yard, there is an electric box, and there's skip laurels planted around it. And it doesn't look like the hedge that was described, because what the recommendation was 4 foot skip laurels planted very, very tightly, since the pool equipment, even though it's on Dr. Tisserand's side yard, it's in our front yard. So 2 new pieces of information. Piece of information number 1 is the deciduous tree, that we don't see how there's going to be enough room to put all that stuff. And second, we're afraid that the deciduous tree will cause the skip laurels to be dead. Our recommendation that we put in here is the pool equipment be covered with some commercial cover, in case any of that stuff isn't possible, or in case the skip laurels die. Or one of the board members the last time suggested a small brick retaining wall be built, so that if the plants die, that we're not seeing or hearing the pool equipment. That's the appeal.
And the last time in the meeting, you even asked, the board asked Dr. Tisserand if he would mind planting the 6 foot skip laurels. And he said, no, he wouldn't mind. And then when you all went back to vote, you said that you thought it was sufficient for the 4 feet. But if you go back down in that picture, you'll see what 4 feet in the front yard, if, you know, keep going up, I guess. And then that doesn't cover the electric box, and we can see it. So we prefer, that's the whole point. We don't want to just see or hear the equipment. And with the tree, I don't know how a full bush hedge is going to grow with that tree there, and which wasn't there in the pictures before, and with the pad. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, let me go around and see if anyone has any questions for you before you go. Mike, did you have any questions for?
No, sir, Mr. Wood. Also.
All right. Jim, did you have any questions for the appellant?
I do not.
Okay. Karen, did you have any questions for the appellant?
No.
Bruce, do you have any questions for the appellant?
Yeah, I had a question of, with respect to the deciduous tree, are you suggesting that you understand that the distance is not sufficient between the proposed placement of the equipment and the deciduous tree? Is that
from the foundation of the house to the deciduous tree? We don't walk onto Dr. Tisserand's property and measure, but just from line of sight, we don't know how it's possible to put a couple feet of space and then start the 5 foot pad, concrete pad that the pool equipment will sit on, and then have some more space to plant the skip laurels. We just don't know how
how a full hedge will grow so that we can't see the pool equipment and how it will grow a full hedge. And so that is new information because there's a tree there that was not in the pictures that you all saw before. So we can't say it's not new information, and we need to figure out how a 5x8 pad of equipment plus a full hedge that's got to be 2 feet by 2.5 at least for the root ball, and a whole hedge is going to cover the equipment under a tree, and how that's all going to fit. That's what we were asking. Plus, we had asked before for the retaining wall, or someone, your board member suggested it, and then you all said it wasn't necessary. But we're just, all we're trying to do is just not see or hear the pool equipment out our front door. That's what we're trying not to do. So that's where the new information is that there's a tree there. And we need to understand how a full hedge can fit. And if you see those other pictures, those skip laurels do not cover that equipment. And we can't say that it does because you can clearly see the equipment right there. So if you all don't accept the appeal, you're saying that then we will be seeing the equipment, even though you voted on the full hedge. So all we're doing is asking for it to be covered and to figure out how to do that with a tree that's in the picture that you all didn't see before.
So, Mr. Wood, the tree is shown on the topo plans. Staff, if you're on item H, you could go to slide 10 or slide 12.
It's not in your in that artistic rendering with the equipment.
I know. Yeah, there you go, staff. The big site plan there. Sorry, it wasn't slide 10. There you go. I mean, they're on there. The plans
Yes.
are. It indicates the drawings. I understand that it's not on the the rendering that they provided to show what they were trying to lay out, but the tree's
So-
there.
No, I understand that, but it's not in the renderings to show how the bushes and the concrete pad are going to cover it up. That's all. That's all.
Okay.
Slide, or staff, can you go to slide 44 on going back to what we've previously reviewed? So you scroll down, so right there is the tree, and
Yeah.
there's the kind of proposed concrete pad. And then if you scroll down one more picture, so we had kind of this previous picture from before. I am a little curious in that dimension, because if you go back up, Steph, to the page above, I am curious because we are going out 5 feet like they're saying, and then we're starting the skip laurel hedge. And
Yes.
the root ball of that tree is pretty close. I don't have a dimension, so I don't know. I can assume that chimney is usually around 2 feet. So typically we're going to go probably 3 feet past that. And then it does start to, get a little close. Like skip laurels are pretty shade tolerant. Did I notice the tree there and how tight it's getting before? It's tough to say. So I understand what you're asking. I don't have any questions at the moment, but let me go around the board and talk about it a little bit, and then we will make a decision. Okay. Thank you for your time. So Mike, do you have any further thoughts on it? I mean, I see, the tree was a part of the application before, but kind of the new information of does what they plan to actually fit, it's a good point. I honestly don't know.
Yeah, I hear your point. I mean, that site plan we looked
Yeah.
at previously has got a few dimensions on there, Michael. We could look at in terms of, there's a 10-foot storm sewer easement that's easily applicable to see what kind of spacing we've got. I hear your point, though. You're getting close to the root ball, but
Yeah, I'm just seeing if, so I'm zooming in here. So it's the right side of the home. Yeah, it's tough. So there's a scale here. I'm just wondering whether I really paid attention to that was that close before. That's all. Because it does make it a little trickier to get away with what they were doing. Jim, do you have any thoughts on the?
Michael, I thought that the landscaping company or the pool company they were actually, I thought that maybe there wasn't a retaining wall, but they were gonna put the pad below grade so that there would be a grade change to the pad, which would create a screen before you even got to the laurels.
Yeah, I do remember that. So staff, if you just go down one page, you can kind of see the dramatic, not dramatic. That's a little dramatic on my part. There is a significant drop of probably about a foot. What do they have on that? I can't read. What does that say? Does it say 24 inches? I can't read what that says.
I think it says 24 inches.
Yeah,
So there's a
thought they
pretty
talked
significant
about,
drop.
but grade, grade change there that would, pretty much screen.
Yeah. I guess it's just the concern of, did we know that kind of tree was impinging on what they were wanting to do? If we don't feel that it's an issue and you guys all considered it, it was just something that I personally had not seen and was considering during the review of the application. That's all I'm saying. If you guys saw it and did it, then so be it. It's just something that I thought about. So, Karen, did you have any thoughts to the appellant?
No, I just really think that, skip laurels are movable. I think that they may not be a straight line like that. But when you get out there and you're working with a tree, and you may have to adjust the way that they are planted.
Okay.
So,
Bruce, did you have any thoughts?
Well, the first instance is the existence of a tree a new fact? I don't think it's a new fact. I think Michael, both of you have pointed out that it was there. We did discuss, as I recall, with the person that was doing the landscaping, how it was going to work. And the fact that it was depressed a bit because of the slope. The pad is below grade. So I have a difficulty saying the tree is a new fact.
Okay.
And that's the first question.
Right.
What I would like, in an ideal situation here, it's not, this is moved beyond us. This is a neighbor to neighbor question. What can we do to be good neighbors with one another? Is there anything that the two neighbors can work out among themselves? But if the question is applying our guidelines, including whether they should have an appeal, that's a separate question. So a lot of this is, and my concern is that drawing us into things that are beyond what our scope is for dealing with the design guidelines.
Okay. Does anyone want to make a motion about the appeal?
I'd make a motion to deny the appeal.
I'd second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor to deny the appeal, say aye.
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 Any against? Nay. Any abstentions? All right, the motion passes 4-1-0. Thank you for your time. All right, moving on to the third appeal of the application.
Asking Dr. Tesserant to unmute.
I just want to point out, Michael, to the homeowner, should his appeal be granted, his application would be reviewed de novo, and any affected party on that application would be able to appeal if there was new information or if there was a misapplied guideline.
Okay.
Is that the Pandora box?
Once you open it, it's open.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Dr. Tisserand, are you on?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So if we can go through I guess the sequence of images, that would be great. First of all, I want to thank you for your time, guys. I know that's probably family time, so thanks a lot for being here. This is basically the line that was drawn last time, and there was a bunch of information missing, and I'm going to provide that information. On that plat, the trees were not necessarily, the green trees you see there, they're not real trees, they're ornamental trees, they're very small trees, and they are not positioned exactly where they are. Also, the trees on my neighbor's property were not showing at all. So I just want to show you an accurate plat that really will show you how the trees are located. So if you go to the next picture. So if you look at all the little crosses you see, these are ornamental trees. The black line, the property line, you can see where it's located is basically in between ornamental trees between their property and my property. Okay, so in the past, when we look at all the little ornamental trees above the drainage gravel, these were all smooshed up and big, and they were just showing my side. They're actually super small trees, and you'll see it on the next picture. Now, there's one thing I want to bring up is a new element. That's what actually Mr. Girolamo was supposed to be online earlier, and he could not connect with you. There is not just a fence that goes with him, but there's a gate exactly at the location you cut off last time. So when initially you went, do you mind going back to the old drawing up top? Thank you. So when you cut that property line that goes in the middle of the fence in the back, on the right of the drainage part, the limit between my property line and that line you drew is not 5 to 6 feet, it's actually 26 feet. Okay, so that's a huge piece of property. But regardless, within this 26 feet, there's a gate that is existing that Mr. Girolamo placed to be able to get into my yard. So that gate is existing already. So that's a new element that Mr. Girolamo was supposed to bring up tonight, and he could not get online for whatever reason. But I'm bringing up that as a new element myself. There is a gate for Mr. Girolamo and myself to communicate from our yard to his yard. Would you place that fence the way you did? Not only you would take 26 feet away from my property line, but also you would remove access from the Girolimos from their property to mine. Okay, so I just want to bring that up. That's a pretty big new element. 26 feet, it's not like 5 to 6 feet like you mentioned earlier. It's a huge amount. And then he would no longer be able to communicate with me. And he paid for that fence himself. Okay, so if we can go down a little further. So that's the big new information. So now you can see on this plan you have today that I did on the bottom, my proposed fence line in orange there is 1 foot from the property line. Okay, so it's not on the property line. And according to the guidelines, I do not need my neighbor's approval for that. Because we don't agree to the the property line, I get that, but that's a foot away from it. Number one, if you look at the bottom part of the fence I propose, it's right in the middle of 2 mature trees. So it goes right in between. There's actually 8 feet between these 2 trees. So if you put the line at 1 foot from the property line, the fence, 1 foot from the property line, you actually are right in between these 2 mature trees, and then you go a straight line up to the Girolamo fence. And if you do that, the Girolamo still can access my property and their property with the existing gate from their land to my land. So that's a big piece of new information, I believe. If we can go down a little more, that would be great. Just to show you what, and then before you go down, sorry, I went too fast. Before you go down, I want to make one point that if you look at these little crosses that represent the ornamental trees, there's a huge amount of screening for my neighbors not to see my fence or my property that's already existing. All these crosses on the left side are on their property and they're existing. So there is already huge screening. So if you can go further down, that'd be great. So if you stop here, so you see the trees that were drawn initially as big trees, there are tiny little trees that's 12, 14, 15, you can see them there. They're just microscopic. One is almost invisible. It's so small. And the gates of the Girolamos is on that left side of the drainage path there. It's right where it says Girolamo gate. So they enter their property to mine right there. So would you put a fence like you did initially, like would you initially, not only would take 26 feet from my land, but also the Girolamo would not be able to access my property anymore. If you can go down further. Okay, so here you go. So these are the trees that we're talking about. So the yellow line is the proposed fence location, which is 1 foot from the pink line. The pink line is the property line. And all these ornamental trees that are drawn here are pretty ridiculous. Do you see how small these guys are? They're microscopic. And there's a lot of them on the other side of the property as well to screen from my neighbors. So if you go down further, you can see again how these trees are really microscopic. And now this is, yeah. So that's the same trees, is to show how small they are. And I'll stop right here. Now, again, here there's that yellow line. That's the proposed fence line. It's right in between 2 mature trees. So the big evergreen and the crepe myrtle right here. It would go right in between the 2 of them. And that's 1 foot away from the property line. And again, there's tons of screening on my neighbor's side where they don't see the fence. There's a lot of evergreen trees they planted there. So all this was missing on the first drawing. Their trees were not there, and my trees were misrepresented in size. And now you can see the gate, the Girolamos. There you go, it's right there. So it's pretty obvious here that the screening for my neighbors is there. And one more thing I want to bring up is that, you know, there's, I believe the guidelines of the Western Association was misapplied by pushing things like 5 to 26 feet from my property line. I mean, there's nothing in the guideline that says it should be pushed that far away. It just said that it should be pushed, it should not be on the property line if they don't agree, but going 5 feet or even 26 feet is a bit excessive. So if you look on this picture you have here on the left side, you can see the yellow line, that's where the fence will start. It is right in between these 2 mature trees. And you can see the pink line next to it is actually the property line. So I'm just, you know, asking that you guys, you know, apply the guidelines of Western Association and just push the fence one foot away from the property lines, so there is no argument with my neighbors. That's the fence. And you can see on the left, the property line in pink and the proposed fence line in yellow. And if you can stop here, this is a picture I took for the Finch property you just went over, just to answer some questions they have. They cannot measure the fence, but JR, who is my landscaper and the landscaper that is going to design the pool and the yard, has no concern about skip laurel growing there. He said there'll be no issue there. And there's 15 feet between the wall and that tree is exactly, you wanted to know a number, it's exactly 15 feet. So there's plenty of room for my 5 feet of pad, and there's an extra 10 feet before we get to the tree. And there's a lot of trees that already exist between the properties anyway. This was just taken a couple of days ago. There's even in the winter, there's tons of evergreen and things that cover that pool equipment. So there's no need to really make a huge deal out of it. I think that's most everything. And I want to reiterate that the board last time, you know, mentioned that trees were nicer than putting some kind of box or anything like that in the pool. And you guys all agreed to that, and it makes a lot of sense to me too. Voila.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir. All right, let me go around, see if anyone has any questions for you, and then we will talk about it, okay? Mike,
Sure.
did you have any questions?
No, sir. All set. Thank you.
Jim, did you have any questions?
I do not.
Does Karen, do you have any questions for him? Is Karen still on?
Ask
Yes,
him.
she's
I think
on mute.
Karen, you're muted.
There you are, Karen.
Sorry.
Yep. Did you have any questions for the
I don't have
appellant?
questions. Thank you.
Bruce, did you have any questions for the
I
appellant?
just want to make sure that the appellant understands that he's moving to reopen the entire application, not just what he has proposed here tonight. I just want to make sure he understands that, because before we move forward, because this is back to this, just so you understand, this is a square one request you're making for us, of us, including the whole discussion we just had about the pad and the gates and all the other landscaping, everything in your application.
Oh, so,
I just want to make sure you understand what you're asking.
okay, that's fine.
I don't have any application. I don't have any questions for him. So let's have a little discussion board. So, looking at the information, I knew that area was, trees and woods, and I think we were making a special case for an ornamental fence even going along anywhere near our property line to begin with. Because normally our guidelines say that ornamental fences are, and I can read verbatim, where are they? It says, where is it? I had it right here in front of me, and now I'm missing it. Designed for ornamental fences should be used to enclose or define limited areas near the house. They are generally not suitable for extensive use along the property line, especially in wooded areas. And I think, one thing that's always been unclear is there was, in the beginning of this application, there was, claims by the neighbor about trees being taken down, and there was a lot of issues going on. So I think we finally came to a pretty good resolution. I don't think the gate is necessarily new information. I think you could just put a gate in your fence that you're building, and you guys could still have the connection you want without having to go through that wooded area with the fence, which I think we were trying to avoid. So I personally don't see any new information. Mike, do you see anything?
Gate was the only thing for me, Michael. Similar to what you were mentioning earlier, I don't know that I knew there was a gate there.
Okay. Jim, do you have any thoughts on it?
If it wasn't the ornamental fence issue, the location of the fence that he is proposing makes more sense, but not as the ornamental guideline.
Okay. Karen?
I agree with what he just said. I don't see that the one that was proposed before, or the one that was that we're looking at, I don't see how that makes any sense.
Okay. So you don't think a guideline was misapplied, or you're saying a guideline?
I understand that there's the verbiage about how much you can have of ornamental fences and where they are supposed to be and not suitable for extensive use. But I don't know that it changes that having the property line, having the fence line change and cut the corner off doesn't really seem to help this particular requirement.
Okay. Bruce, any thoughts?
To me, the judgment is there are new facts here? And what I understand the applicant is saying is that how much of the fence is back there and that there's a gate in it are new facts. So that's to me is the only question at the moment, whether good, bad, or indifferent, is that a new fact that would open up his entire application.
Right. What do you think?
What I'd said previously is I thought that the discussion was about the back neighbor's fence was very much a part of the decision. It was essential to our determination that an ornamental fence fit within the guidelines because it was going to connect to that fence. So if I'm just thinking about from that perspective, it's not gate, not gate. We absolutely knew there was a fence back there. And there's nothing about what's happened here that changes the neighbors from deciding how they want to address the fence between the two properties.
Okay. Staff, Staff, can you go to slide 150 real quick? I think one thing that's unique is, during the original application, we knew that, I think that the critical thing was that this was a wooded area and an ornamental fence, and we were trying to address, I was trying to work with the application and maybe amend it. And I think right there, that picture, if you look in that bottom picture, you zoom in, that's the area in question. And that's what it used to look like. And I think over time, there's been some, trees have died, whatever, there's been some maintenance that's occurred, but that's a wooded area to me. And I think it was clear that what we worked was to bring that fence inside to eliminate it going through the wooded area. And right now, the current ornamental fence has tons of screening. You can hardly even see it in these pictures directly to the right. And I think that's the whole point of ornamental fencing with our guidelines, is to make sure that they are kind of integrated into the surrounding area for our guidelines. So I personally don't see anything new. So or a guideline was misapplied. So does anyone have a motion that they'd like to make? I'll motion to deny the appeal.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those against?
Nay.
Any abstent? You vote against, Karen?
I vote against, yes.
Okay. All right. Motion passes 3-2 to 0. All right. Thank you. All right. Moving on to 1930 Upper Lake Drive.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome. Thank you for being patient.
Oh, no. Thank you, guys.
If you could walk us through your application, it's exciting. I'm excited to look at it. So go ahead. And are you guys going to be presenting, or do you have your architect on, or a little combo of both?
We do have our architect on. So I've prepared kind of a short explanation of the application, and then we can kind of jump into whatever details you want to go into.
Awesome.
All good? Oops.
Yep, go ahead. The floor is yours.
All right, real good. First of all, some introductions. I'm Wes Rogers. This is my wife, Nancy. And also on the call is our architect, Claire Andreas. Nancy and I are long-term residents of Reston. We moved here in 1994. We actually own 2 houses in Reston right now. Our original house at 11428 Night Star Way, which is in North Reston. We're actually taking the call there. And the Lake Thoreau house on 1930 Upper Lake Drive, which was purchased last year. Presently, we share our time between the 2 houses. But we're looking forward to the day when we can say that 1930 is our only house. Until last year, the house on Night Star Way was our first and only house. In it, we started a family, raised 2 wonderful children, founded a company, and grew 2 careers. It's been a wonderful home surrounded by wonderful neighbors, and over the years it has served us well. But as our journey continues, it no longer meets our needs. With both my wife and I transitioning to retirement, we stepped back to consider where we wanted to live. It was a fairly easy decision. We both agreed that remaining in Reston and all it has to offer was the place, but this was conditioned on finding a house that could meet our new needs and grow with us. As long-term residents, we're very familiar with the Reston Lakes and had always been on the lookout for an opportunity to move lakeside. That opportunity came in April of 2021 when we purchased 1930. We look forward to living on Lake Thoreau. The lake is obviously the prime driver behind this excitement, but so too is the opportunity to transform 1930 into our house, our special place that we plan to call home for the next 20 years. 1930 was constructed in 1979. Its architectural style can best be described as pure and modern. It consists of 3 cubes, a detached garage, a sleeping cube, and the main living space. It is situated at the western end of Lake Thoreau on a fairly steep lot following from street to lake. Because of the contours, there are actually 5 levels in the house. The lot is heavily wooded. To the left of us live the Pat and Patricia Tansey, and to the right, Sharon Cunningham. Over the years, the house has seen some revisions, but it is tired. Now, the application before you will significantly enhance and update 1930 and make it into an exceptional property that showcases the values of Reston. Specifically, the renovation looks to open up the lakeside of the house and maximize the connection between day-to-day life and the daily cycle of the lake and tree canopy, rebalance the architectural purism with the practicality of living by eliminating the wedge in the main living area, adding a workshop, and bringing the house up to date both inside and out, all while being respectful of the land, the lake, and our neighbors. I would like to briefly walk you around the house to highlight some of the key aspects of the project. Starting from the street, we look to make the front entryway more inviting. The front door, which today is partially hidden behind a solid walkway railing, will be directly visible at the end of a straight paved walkway starting at the sidewalk. As you approach the front door, visitors will come upon a small, secluded courtyard on the left. Moving to the left side of the house, 2 key elements are being added. Here you will see the workshop addition. The addition is tucked in between the main living cube, the garage cube, and the sleeping cube. Vertically, it is situated at the lowest level, so from the side, it is partially recessed into the ground. The roof of the workshop is flat and becomes the entryway courtyard to the left of the front door. The second element on this side is a small grill deck. This deck is 4 by 8 and is accessible only from the kitchen and for the purpose of grilling. The back or lakeside is where the most significant work is taking place. The current design has a wedge cut into the back side of the main cube. The wedge, while visually innovative, is expensive in terms of living. 25% of the main living cube volume is lost to the wedge, and it creates awkward, unusable spaces at the corners or tips of the wedge. In total, approximately 35% of the main living cube volume is consumed by the wedge. We will replace the wedge by squaring off the lakeside facade with a wall of floor-to-ceiling windows and sliders. The glass wall will give expansive views of both the lake and the tree canopy. The upper deck and lower deck will be upgraded. The existing circular staircase will be removed and replaced with the traditional staircase on the right side of the deck. The existing hot tub will be replaced with a partially sunken hot tub that is integrated with the lower patio. The hot tub will be completely screened on the left. The overall footprint of the lower patio is the same as the existing patio. On the right side, we look to reduce the overall footprint of hardscapes. Presently, there is a massive stone and timber patio. We intend to remove this. It will be replaced with a smaller deck that connects the sleeping cube to the backside, lower patio, and upper deck. Replacing the existing patio with the deck will create new land for native plantings. In addition, we will remove the two existing chimneys, creating flat facades on both the main and the sleeping cubes. Finally, the overall exterior siding will be upgraded with fiber cement panels and wood accent. Along with redoing the siding, the central stairwell for the house will be upgraded so that it becomes a discrete design element that bonds the sleeping cube with the main cube. A couple of general notes. This application is the first of three. We will be back before the board to address the dock area and landscaping. The footprint of the house is minimally increased with the addition of the workshop. However, the workshop space is entirely situated inside the area between the three cubes and is recessed into the ground. The footprint of the patio space is actually decreasing with the removal of the side patio on the right side. The roof line, with the exception of the new workshop, is not changing. The integrated gutter system is not changing except for the decorative facade and the repositioning of a couple of downspout. And that's it. As you can appreciate, considerable thought, deliberation, and energy has gone into preparing our application. We feel that these efforts have resulted in an exceptional design that achieves our objectives of upgrading and enhancing 1930 while remaining respectful of the land, the lake, and our new neighbors. We have reviewed our plans with our neighbors and have received their support. Tonight, we ask the design board for full approval of our application so that we can proceed with the submission of building designs to Fairfax County and hopefully start construction in the near future. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Let me go around and see if anyone has any questions for you or your architect, and then we can then we'll have some discussion and have some back and forth. So just to be clear, you guys are looking for full approval though for the house renovation. It's not a conceptual approval. You're looking for full approval to move full speed ahead, right?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, Mike B, do you have any questions for the applicant or their architect?
I don't have any questions right now, Michael, and I just want to say thank you very much for such a thorough and thoughtful presentation. So,
thank you.
Jim, did you have any questions?
No, this looks like a very nice application.
Okay. Karen, did you have any questions?
No, I'm happy with it.
Okay. Bruce, did you have any questions?
No, I agreed with the thoughts that it was an exciting project, very interesting adaptation of the structure and very well presented.
Okay. So I just have a couple questions. So for the siding you guys are proposing, the big format 4x8 hardy panel, are these going to be are you guys going to have a little bit of a reveal gap? Are you going to butt them? Is it going to be a rain screen? What exactly is the install method for that?
Yeah, it'll be a rain screen with the reveal detail.
Okay.
The
And
hardy
then are you
reveal
guys
system.
and are you guys going to be painting the same color behind for that reveal?
Yeah.
Okay. So it'll all be, and the siding is all this kind of peppercorn.
Yes,
so
the dark gray. Mm-hmm.
The darker gray. Okay. And all the only thing I couldn't find, and maybe you guys could show me, is there a overall lighting plan? I saw that there was lights proposed, but did you guys show exactly where?
Yeah, it should be on
oh, I guess, yeah.
The last page of the architectural. Yeah.
Yeah, slide 30. There it is.
There's locations shown on the plans.
I see. Okay. So you have some mostly downward facing lights. Okay. So there's nothing that's really projecting out from what I mean, most of it's all low level lighting and then some sconces. Okay. Well, we just like to protect to make sure that the lake isn't getting glaring lights from.
Yeah, there's no ambient light on the lakefront side. Just downlight.
It's just when it's a full application, I like to make sure that we have all the details so that way things don't come back to bite us when they try to inspect you all. The planter boxes are all going to be, they're on slide 46. Are those just, there's just a solid wood, or are you going to put the Trex around them? I couldn't quite understand exactly that detail. Slide 46, staff. If you could just walk me through what, because there you're saying 4x4s, but then the picture I feel like shows much thinner. But maybe those are 4x4s.
Yeah, those are 4x4s stacked, and then they're stained that dark brown color.
Okay, and that's matching the decking, the pecan decking, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then I'd like to just address any trees that potentially are impacting. So it looks like there's a couple trees due to the workshop, maybe. Can you just walk us through, are there pictures of these trees and kind of what, yeah, it looks like there's one white oak, and then there was a couple hollies, I believe.
Yeah, the tree plan is at the beginning of the application.
Yeah. When we originally submitted the application, we were unaware of the that there's no size, minimum size on ornamentals. So that was the addendum that we added.
Okay.
There's only one tree that would be removed, but several of the ornamentals. If you go to I don't know what it would be on the PDF, but it's A12 on, well, yeah, there's
that's the first one that was submitted.
Yeah, staff, I thought I saw.
It's page 4.
Oh, it's way up there. There it is.
There we go.
Yeah, that's the correct one.
So there's 6 hollies there, and there's 1 white oak, correct? That's going to need to be coming out for the workshop. And then a ornamental crepe myrtle. Okay. And so, do you guys have a landscaping plan for anything going back, or?
So we work with Hidden Lanes, specifically Anthony Pizzelli. He's done a lot of, we've submitted his work to you before for our existing house. And when we had him come out, he felt that their company works better after they see the space. And so we can really talk about, you know, what different landscaping rooms and things that we want. And we also, you know, we mentioned that we want to put a lot of native plants back in. So we specifically will put in American hollies. He's put those in at our house. But as far as a landscaping plan, we are hoping that you'll allow us to do that later. So after the space is a little more developed, he can come back in and put in, you know, something that makes sense versus just, you know, putting something on a 2-dimensional piece of paper.
Okay.
Yeah. He basically told us he said, call me when the hardscape's in.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's okay as long as we staff, is that, I mean, do we have precedent for doing that? Is that okay? That
I
we
would
can say
suggest
we require a site plan, landscaping plan once project has reached substantial completion.
I would suggest a time frame for that to be submitted.
Okay.
So if it's a year or 10 months, 12 months, 16 months, whatever it is that the homeowner feels that they can successfully complete their project, we would need a date to follow up.
Okay.
Yeah. And we would be happy.
Yeah,
we would be
that
happy
sounds
with
fair.
that.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I saw from a landscaping perspective is you guys are moving your AC units to the other side of the home, and what I would request is that there be, you know, pretty good substantial screening put on that, because it's kind of it's going to be a new feature. I mean, I'm sure they're going to be much more efficient and much quieter, but it's going to be a new eyesore for your neighbor that they probably didn't realize. So just to be on the safe side of things, it'd be good to do some sort of screening. for sure on that side. So I would just make sure that I'm going to probably put that as a stipulation in the application when you guys do come back with the landscape plan, that is addressed.
Yeah, there's already quite a few ornamentals there that we haven't shown because we're keeping them.
But yeah, we would agree
Yeah.
on screening for that. It's not an issue.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. And then the one thing that, and I read it here, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page. The roof is staying the same. You're not proposing new roof, correct?
No.
And the roof,
That
can you
is
guys,
correct.
it looks like is it a brown though right now? Or is it just the pictures are rendering that way? And it's actually more of a grayish. It sure looks
Good
brown.
question.
And I'm just,
I would say it's more. I would say it's more in the gray space than the brown space.
okay, yeah,
But we are
I'm just
not
worried
at this point. At this time, we have no intent to replace the roof at this point.
okay. And from an architectural standpoint, you guys are okay with it? It just is slightly not, and it's just me from my background of an architect. I'm just worried that the existing roof is slightly a little bit different with the color scheme. But if you guys have done kind of sample boards and are confident that it's going to work, just all the renderings show the roof is black. So I just want you guys to realize that your roof is not black, but you do have the wood accents and stuff like that I think will help kind of marry it together. I just want to kind of point that out to my fellow board members just so they're kind of aware of that. But otherwise, I think it's thorough application. It looks good. I just like to go all the way through it just to make sure we have all things accounted for, because there's a lot that needs to go into in a renovation like this. I'm sure you have probably about 100 decisions you didn't even know you have coming forward. So you will be overwhelmed, to say the least. So anyways, going back, does anybody at the board have any discussion you guys want to have? I can be quiet now. So Mike, do you have any thoughts?
I'm all set, Michael. Thank you.
Okay. Jim, did you have any kind of thoughts?
I'm good.
Okay. Karen, any thoughts?
No, I'm fine too.
Okay. Bruce?
Fine as well. Thank you.
All right. So does anyone want to make a motion? They're looking for full approval.
I'll make a motion to approve the application as submitted.
There is
Do you want to make
time frame.
Do you want to make an amendment on the? Well, hold on. First, there's a motion. Let me hear. Is there a second for the motion first?
Second.
All right. So there's a motion, a second. So further discussion. I would suggest that we amend the motion to include requirement of a landscaping plan.
Okay.
Be submitted within, let's say within 12 months from approval date.
I would accept the amendment.
And that was, sorry, 1 second, and that would include so screening along the AC units at a bare minimum, but also require kind of an overall kind of infill plan for some of the trees that have been removed on the left side of the property as well. For due to the addition.
That was tree replacement, the screening, and then a 12-month, just to be clear.
Correct.
I would accept the amendment.
All right, Karen, do you accept the amendment as the seconder?
I do.
All right, so the amendment's been accepted. All right, so any further discussion on the motion? All right, so all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any against?
Aye, if you didn't hear me.
I heard you that time, Karen, don't worry. Any abstentions? All right, motion passes 5-0-0. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Good evening.
Have a good night. All right, moving on to Purple Sage Cluster.
Hi,
Hello, welcome back.
thanks. Good to see you guys again.
Yeah, so you can walk
Maggie.
us.
Sorry.
You're okay. Walk us through kind of the updates that you have for us. I think we asked for a couple things. We asked for a photometric study. we asked you to look at potential different light fixtures and some other things. So if you could kind of walk us through what you guys did, and then I believe there are some affected parties on this application, so we'll hear from them after we hear from your presentation. So take it away.
Sorry, my dog's just barking. Yeah, so I mean, we updated our photometric study based on the last thing that you had asked for. And we're submitting it for your approval.
Okay.
Maggie.
All right, let's hear from the affected parties then. If you guys could go through the affected parties, that'd be great, staff.
Yes, so first we have Jim Moran and Bob Sledhouse. And they are being asked to unmute.
Hi, this is Bob Sledges. Thanks for having us, and appreciate the work that the board has done on this, the DRB. I'm pleased that there's been additional discussion with the Purple Sage Board of Directors. And I know this is not something that affects a DRB decision, but we are pleased to see that they are agreeing to pursue multiple bids, because I believe that shows a sound business judgment, and the board's willing to do their due diligence. And we look forward to further information as this goes forward. So I just encourage our own board to continue to cooperate. And thank you. That's all I got.
Thank you, Bob. Next.
Next, we have Gavin Norris. Don't see them on the call. We could go to Chris and Laura Wells. Thought I had seen them earlier.
Yes, we're here.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we've just, we're glad that we're getting multiple bids. We really think we should have a few others to choose from, because this lighting issue has been going on for as long as we've lived here, which is going on 3 years.
Almost 3 years now, so.
Yeah. And we really want to get a good have a good option, and that's going to be sustainable, since this has been, it sounds like it's been an ongoing problem, and it's really not safe for the way the street lights are right now. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And also, just a reminder, I didn't remind anybody, but you have 3 minutes as an affected party. We haven't come close to that, but I just want to remind people. So do we have any more affected parties?
Michael, Jim Moran has his hand up. He was part of the original.
he can use the other half of Bob's time.
Perfect. Okay. He could
Hey,
unmute
Jim.
them.
Jim, you there? I believe you're unmuted now.
Yes.
Jim, are you there? Jim? Looks like I got disconnected. Is there anyone else as an affected party?
Nope, that's it.
All right. If he joins back in, we can, I'm willing to acknowledge his remaining minute and a half. All right, so correct me if I'm wrong, staff, but I thought we asked them to look into new fixtures as well, because I thought we weren't on board with this fixture as being, but maybe I'm thinking of the 2 times ago.
Okay. You're thinking of the 2 times ago.
Okay, so this was the new updated. This is the new updated fixture, okay, that we saw last time, and all the concrete bases have been removed. All the wiring is within the pole. Is the applicant's contractor on by chance? Or Colleen, are you still on?
Yeah, I'm here. I was looking for John, and I think something came up that he was not able to make it tonight.
But just to be clear, you still have all of the concrete's been removed below grade, at least to below grade. All the wiring is still within the poles. This was strictly just kind of you bringing back the final photometric study for these poles.
Yeah, you just wanted the photometric study.
Okay.
Like the change of heads, that was, I think, two times ago, 3 times. I don't even know how many now.
Yeah, no, I've lost count as well. So
Yeah.
so okay. The big issue that, and I'm not trying to bring in new kind of information, but we had issues with another cluster where the height of the pole for pedestrian lighting was a major concern. And this is at 15 feet height. Is that is accurate, correct?
Whatever the current pole height is what we have submitted.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, okay. 14 feet by 4-inch steel bronze poles. Okay. And the lights mounted on top of that. Okay.
And we do have our application in with the county, with the zoning board.
Okay.
Michael, Jim Moran says he can go through Bob's. Mike, if you want to go ahead and listen to him at this point, or you want to wait?
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead. He has 1.5 minutes left of their time.
Hey, everybody, this is Jim. I had to move to Bob's computer. Can you hear me?
Yep. Go ahead, Jim. Just you have a minute and 1.5 minutes.
Yeah, 3 questions. One, Will, I understand that Mike Wood, you are in favor of a warmer color temperature, in the 3,000 Kelvin range. I was wondering if you would consider that we can go a little bit higher in the 400 Kelvin area, 4,000 Kelvin area, simply because, or mainly because everybody's getting cameras, doorbell cameras,
Okay, that's enough.
and surveillance.
Next issue.
And the next issue would be that we were promised by PSE, and they promised the board and our neighbor and the neighbors, the affected parties here, that they would come out and give us a demonstration of the lighting, how it's the pattern of the lights and how it's going to hit the ground. That hasn't been done, and I believe they're still willing to do that. It's just a matter of setting that up by our board, setting that up. Thirdly,
photometric study.
The photometric study. Could you explain to everybody on here that black thing with a bunch of white stuff? Is that satellite? Do they come over with satellites and do an overhead? Is that from an aerial view? What does that really depict on the black thing, or even the left?
The time is up. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah. So, from my understanding, the black, just to answer that last question, the black thing is kind of an artistic rendering of the perfect ideal scenario from above. So I think that's all that's kind of trying to show. I think I like to look personally at the left thing just because that kind of shows better where the light is overlapping or not overlapping, where's there's concentration of light, etc. So let me go around the board members and see if there's any questions for Colleen. And then we'll go from there. So Mike, did you have any questions?
No, sir. Thank you.
Jim, did you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Karen, did you have any questions?
Yeah, I just need to know, there are no numbers for any of the wattages or anything. So I don't really know what this.
Yeah, the only slide that shows it really, Karen, is slide 7, Steph, if you could go there. Go down one slide, Steph.
It's taken a few minutes to upload.
LaShonda, we need to get you a new computer. I need to get you some more memory there. But anyways, so Karen, so there's one that's at 39 watt. There's 21 that are at 70 watts, 3000 Kelvin. And then there's 3 at 39 watts, 3000 Kelvin. So they're anywhere from 39 to 70 watts, but the majority of them are 70 watts.
And so does it, but which ones in that drawing?
I would assume the majority of what you're looking at is 70 watt, and then there's 4 outliers that are 39 watts. Which ones those are, I can't tell you. You can zoom in. So if you look at, I don't even know how accurate that is, because if you zoom in on the photometric, it looks like they did everything with the 70 watt. If you zoom in the bottom right of the photometric study on slide 12, they did everything with the 70 watt fixtures except for one 39 watt fixture. And it says it's type B, and it looks like it's the one on the far right of the page that's kind of down there by itself. So.
And the poles are how tall, please?
They're 15 feet.
Yes, okay. And how high was the one that we had the troubles with recently?
I was trying to remember the difference between this light fixture and the other light fixture that they had all those issues with was that one was more of like a open face fixture on all 4 sides, whereas this one does point downwards. So I do think that's going to help significantly. This is more of just a updated shoebox fixture. So I do think that would help. So yeah, did you have anything else, Karen? Any questions?
No, I just normally you see something that gives you it shows you a drawing, let's say, and it gives you some foot candles, but they don't have that. You have to make the jump between the information on the chart and the.
Correct. Yeah, there's a little bit of a interpretation needed, unfortunately.
It doesn't really quite fill the
bill. Bruce, did you have any questions?
No, you asked the question just to confirm. The existing lights are, what I've understood is that are also the same height, 15 feet. So that from that perspective, we're not introducing anything new here, except to the extent of where those fixtures are pointed. That's how I understand it.
Correct. Yeah, and I think it's more of just honestly updating them. I think from what I remember, there's only like 4 working light fixtures in this entire community at the moment. So I think it's a little bit of a pressing issue from what I kind of recall from all the meetings we've had. So, but yes, it's just replacing them in place.
And the 3,000 is within our guideline.
Yeah, I believe for neighborhoods, and staff, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm trying to pull up for site lighting in neighborhoods. It is in fact 3,000 Kelvin, correct? I think you can do 2,700 to 3,000. Does that sound right, Steph?
That is correct.
Cluster. Okay.
So Michael, I'm good with the information that's been provided. Thank you.
Okay. The only question I would have, and I think it would be a good idea, and I think it would kind of help settle if the contractor is willing to do a mock-up of the light. I mean, by all means, take them up on it and see what it looks like, because there's other clusters that haven't, and it's sometimes, it's tough to put the jack back in the box after they've already ordered all the fixtures and they start putting them up and people start seeing it and then they start complaining. It would be good to do a mock-up of the height and of the light throw so people can see it. I don't think that's a bad idea, especially if whoever the contractor is, and maybe you put that in your stipulation when you're getting multiple bids, that a sample installation is included in the bid. It may cost a little extra money to do, but it could be well worth it in the long run. So you guys get to know what these kind of look like. And I think that would also help drive the 3,000 Kelvin concern. Normally that's not a brightness thing, it's just a color thing. So if the light that they propose is not bright enough, you guys could always switch it out for a more higher wattage light that would put off more lumens, which is kind of what Karen was kind of referencing with her question. So I think a mock-up would be a good idea. It's not something I don't think we can mandate, but I do think from a neighborhood standpoint, Colleen, would you guys be kind of willing to kind of work with whatever contractor you guys finally select to do that? Colleen?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Yes, that's actually, we've been talking about this with the community for 2.5 years, that's part of the plan.
Right.
We just needed to know what to order so that we can get the sample installed. So, we're doing one step at a time so that we know what we need to do in order to get this moving forward. And so
Awesome.
really,
Okay.
we're just waiting on your word, please.
All right. Well, let me go around and see if there's any motion or any sort of question or any discussion. So does anyone have a motion they want to make on the application?
I would move to approve the application as submitted, with the recommendation that the community have its contractor do a demonstration of the height and actual fixture, and then that we would include the normal stipulation that the DRB reserves the right to review the actual installation as we've done. I forget the exact language, but we do address this concern with the level of illumination. And that's the kind of the standard language we've put in all these community lighting approvals.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a motion. Do I hear a second?
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes. Thank you, Colleen. All right, moving on to the final application of the night, Chad's Ford Drive, which is 2015 Chad's Ford Drive. Is the applicant here?
Yes, he is
Yes.
here.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, my name is Patrick Rankin. I am Mrs. Brennan's representative and designer. I thank you all for being here and thank you for your time tonight. I know it's getting late. So in the interest of time, I'd like to read a letter written by Mrs. Brennan to you all. Dear members of the, hello?
Yes, hello.
Okay. Dear members of the Reston Design Review Board, I'm writing you today as a follow-up on my application for a 3-story sunroom addition on the back of my townhouse at 2015 Chad's Ford Drive. My application has been deferred twice now as a result of the Chad Ford Cluster Board's aggressive moves to incorporate new clustered standards in response to my application. In our October 5th Zoom meeting, the Chad's Ford Cluster Board somehow secured the meeting slot immediately preceding our meeting and had a new cluster standard on decks enacted that directly affected my application. I was neither notified in advance of their application nor offered the opportunity to apply as an affected party, as I most surely am and would have. I believe that this new deck standard was rushed through and that the Chad's Ford community at large was not properly informed, nor offered the opportunity to discuss and deliberate the pros and cons of the proposed new standard. In our DRB meeting on January 11th, we were told that a decision on my application will be deferred again until the outcome of the cluster application for proposed additions to building standards was determined, even though I've had my application in since October 2021. The cluster's attempt to enact new building standards at the most recent full panel DRB meeting on Tuesday, February 15th was unsuccessful. Among the reasons given by several of the DRB members and other affected parties for not approving the cluster's proposed additions to building standards were it was overarching, it was less than clear, it was discriminatory towards the less mobile, it was pushed upon the cluster residents without sufficient deliberation, and that cluster standards were intended for smaller improvements such as window type, but not for larger architectural enhancements, as that would fall under the purvey of the DRB. I am and have been working in good faith with the Reston Design Review Board to improve my home within the existing guidelines and with the DRB's guidance. One of the driving forces behind my decision to apply with the DRB for a 3-story addition is to accommodate a future elevator application in my home. There are framing details in the engineering plans to allow for the elevator shaft. It is my intent to stay in my home as long as possible, and the elevator application helps make that a real possibility. One of the other motivations for the addition is to take full advantage of my view of beautiful Lake Thoreau. Among the reasons given by the affected parties to my application for not approving the addition was that it would infringe on the privacy of my neighbors. My townhouse is a middle unit. The back of my house is set back from both neighbors. My proposed addition remains set back from the rear of my neighbors' homes, so there is no change in the amount of privacy. Another reason given by the affected parties is that an addition on my home would cause a devaluing of other homes in the neighborhood. In Reston, Virginia, it is generally accepted that architectural enhancements increase the value of neighboring homes, not devalue them. The third reason given by the affected parties is that they are protecting the integrity of the existing architecture. I would submit that my proposed uniform 3-story addition is more in keeping with the architecture of Chadds Ford than several of the existing additions in the cluster, which are either 1 or 2 stories and either half length or full length of the existing home. The Chadds Ford Cluster Board has suggested, in its bid to have new standards enacted, that they will only allow 1-story and half length additions. I believe this approach will lead to a very chopped up and incongruent appearance. My proposed design is not a wild departure from the existing architecture, and we have already made modifications to the design based on the comments from the affected parties in our first meeting. In addition, there are already multiple 2-story glass sunroom additions within the Chadds Ford cluster. Pictures and the addresses of these homes are included with my application. In conclusion, I believe my proposed design is within the current standards and is architecturally in line with the existing Chadds Ford architecture. I also believe I have the right to prepare my home for an elevator application so that my family and I can enjoy it for years to come. I thank the DRB board and staff members for all of their assistance and guidance on this important matter. Ashney Brennan. The only thing I'd like to add to that letter is that we really have tried really hard to have this architected and designed in such a way to blend in. And we were asked as part of this to render the neighbors' homes on both sides, as you can see right here. First of all, from the affected parties that you'll hear from tonight, none of them can see this from their home because the only place you can see it from is Lake Thoreau. Secondly, most of the folks I show this to have a hard time telling that there was an addition built there. So that's really our goal, is to have it blend in the elevator shaft and taking advantage of the beautiful view. And that's what I have for you today. Thank you so much.
Awesome, thank you. Let me hear from the affected parties, and then we will come back to you for any questions. Okay, Patrick?
Could we just get a clarification?
Sure.
That picture is not the current application.
That is the current application.
I thought the current application, they took away
Yes, go down one more slide, Steph. Just go down one slide on this. Is that revised submittal on the right is the current application?
So, and the only reason that we would leave the existing deck is because of what happened on October 5th, that there was a standard enacted without proper notification that would not allow my client to build a new deck to the same, to exactly where it is today, because they've reduced the size of allowable decks. So I believe that the standard was enacted to stop the process here, but in the end, we can either put the new deck on, which would be a Trex product wrapped in PVC with a white Trex arson railing, or if we have to abide by this new standard that I don't think was enacted correctly, then we will leave the existing deck and work around it, which of course would be challenging, but we can do that.
Okay.
So, but I guess we need to understand what application we're reviewing.
I mean, when
the
when I
revised or the
resubmitted,
original.
I resubmitted, or we resubmitted with the new deck involved. So if that becomes an issue, so yes, it is with the one to the left.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's hear from the affected parties, please. Just a reminder to affected parties, you have 3 minutes to make your case. If you are representing a group or a cluster, in this instance, you would have 5 minutes.
Hi there. I think I'm unmuted. My name is Carissa Barker. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So I am a board member, but in this moment, I'm speaking as an individual homeowner of the neighborhood. And I have been part of this process since the beginning, and I continue to oppose the DRB application submitted for Achene's property at 2015. Here are the reasons. I'm just going to read to you because it's late and I want to make sure to hit all the points. The 3-story addition is inconsistent with the architectural look of our cluster. There are no other 3-story additions aside from the one that was added without pre-approval and was only accommodated by Reston Association as the property was sold to a new homeowner. The change on the rear facades of our homes takes away from the staggered design and creates an inconsistent and arbitrary feel. One of the greatest appeals in living in Reston, and the reason homeowners agree to live with 2 HOAs, is so that our properties are held to high standard. Chadsford initiated a standard to self-govern, which is in the final stages of being completed. As you're aware, the vast majority of our voting neighbors agreed to the additions, that additions should be kept to a single story. The submitted design has not addressed the concerns presented at prior DRBs, nor has the homeowner or builder made any efforts to engage the Cluster Standards Committee or board members as was specifically requested by you, the DRB. The consistent aesthetic standard maintains our property values. Inconsistent application of standards nullifies the need to have standards at all. So my deep hope is that you, the DRB, will evaluate this proposal with the same care and consistency that you evaluate all the other proposals that we, the homeowners, submit. And I hope that their persistence is not prioritized over the integrity of our cluster architecture and aesthetics. I know that you've been following this whole issue closely, and so you would recognize some of the inaccuracies in the applicant's statement, since you've been at all the meetings as well. So I do thank you for all that you're doing for us and the extensive amount of time that you and your colleagues have spent on this single but very pivotal application. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Next, we have Sarah or Keith Rocock.
Hi, good evening. I'll keep this short because it's late and the points are essentially the same as Carissa's. So Chadsford townhouses are arranged in a specific staggered pattern to provide privacy from immediate neighbours. No decks are next to each other and there are no second floor decks. Elevations and windows have a distinctive style. By allowing homeowners to extend their property of multiple elevations, this privacy and character will be lost. We are anxious to preserve the harmonious appearance of Chadsford homes. I would also like to add that there's been considerable work amongst the community, volunteer work to draft standards, to consult with members of the community and to follow due process. And I request the DRB consult with their own secretariat to refute some of the inaccuracies in the opening statement from the applicant concerning timing of reviews. This is just inaccurate and incorrect. So thank you for your time.
Next, we have Maxine Phillips.
Hi, Max Phillips here. I'm in 2017 Chadsford, right next to Etchning's unit, and on the other side of me is Annie's unit. Lucky I have both fabulous neighbors on either side of me. But the proposal today is similar to the one on the other side, and I've been present for these meetings. I feel a bit like an outsider. I haven't lived in my home for several years now, but I visit there often. And when this was proposed to me, I did get a real estate agent who is also an architect by sort of a previous trade. I had her come get on my deck with the drawings. The way she interpreted them, she sort of gave me what my new view would be. If you can see from those pictures that were provided, it appears that I'm beyond the 2 units, but with the proposals, that's actually not the case for the actual where you would sit on the deck. I paid extra for my unit because I had this sort of private view of the water. In essence, these additions would swallow me, and I, if you all want to buy my unit and change it all, I'm happy for it. But for now, I'd like to protect both the privacy part of it and my value. The real estate agent did say that these changes for both, if both units were done in addition to the constant and chronic construction noise that's been going on for the last year, that it would continue, obviously, to go forward with these. And when it was done, I would be a bit swallowed by the design. So sort of regrettably, because I want to be a good neighbor, but this is my main asset in life, and I do want to protect it. Thank you.
We have Richard or Anita Hartley, but I do not see them on the call. And then I guess last we have Richard Morton, who is the Chadsford president. Is he on the call? Yeah, there we go. There we go.
Yeah, evening. Okay, right, yeah, hello, I'm Richard Morton, president of the Chadsford Cluster Association Board, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of our cluster board, our standards committee, and our residents. So as the cluster board, we understand the importance of representing the interests of all residents in Chadsford Cluster. And we believe it is important that we ensure the interests of all residents are represented at DRB meetings and also by our cluster standards. We know that Chadsford residents want their privacy protected and their property values maintained. With these goals in mind, the Chadsford board is objecting to this application in support of the neighbours who would be affected by this proposal. As the DRB is aware, Chadsford Cluster is currently working with DRB to seek approval of a cluster standard which helps provide guidance to our residents and the DRB on the types of additions which we believe are in the best interests of all residents. Additions which enable homeowners to enhance their property in a way that is both in keeping with the cluster's architectural style, in particular the staggered layout of the units, and respectful of neighbouring units' privacy. As that standard undergoes revisions based on the DRB and RA staff's valued input and due process, the Chadsford Board and Cluster Standards Committee has, in short order, petitioned residents specifically about the 3-storey addition, as proposed in 2015's application. Over 50% of Chadsford property owners provided their signature in support of the board's position, objecting to this 3-storey addition. This petition has been shared with the DRB, and it is why I can say with complete confidence that the board is representing the interests of our residents. It is important to acknowledge that the proposal we are discussing today has been revised since the initial DRB review. However, the alterations from the original proposal did not do anything significant to address the cluster's concerns relating to privacy or architectural consistency, and at no point has anyone involved with this application attempted to discuss the application with the Chads Ford Board or the Standards Committee. In summary, the Chads Ford Board and Standards Committee has gone to great lengths to ensure that the best interests of all our residents are represented and to support the legitimate concerns of residents who stand to have their privacy and property value affected by this proposal. We appreciate the DRB's continued attention to this application, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Staff, is there anyone else, or is that it?
That's it.
That's
Unless
it
the
for-
Hartleys are on, yeah.
That's it for members, but the RA board, through me as a representative, would like to comment on this as an affected party.
Okay.
I just want to bring it to the DRB's attention that there is a standing decision from the cluster on their decks. There was an October 12th decision that stipulated the size of the decks not being able to go past the side walls on either side. I think that there would be a concern related to being able to move forward with the addition without a temporary removal of the existing deck and then replacement of the existing structure back. I'm not exactly sure how the vendor would be able to do that, and I would encourage the vendor to address that part of the project, seeing as removal of existing structures would technically require DRB approval, and then that would constitute basically a brand new replacement from the position of an enforcement standpoint. That's all.
Okay, so just to be clear, Cam, there was a cluster standard that was approved by us as DRB, correct? That so people cannot build the deck past the side walls anymore?
That is correct. I can pull the decision up if you'd like.
But all the what about, but if your walls extend past the middle units, you can build out a certain distance, I'm assuming maybe 12 feet or something.
In theory, yes. In theory, yes. But the standard only addresses new or replacement decks. Must conform to that new standard. Let me pull it up for you. I can pull it up for you.
So are we saying that the existing deck is fine, but if it were replaced exactly the same way, it would not be fine? Is that what is? That's what I'm hearing.
That is correct.
So there's this notion of a legacy deck in this community.
They have essentially grandfathered those that do not conform to the DRB standard that was approved on October 12th, but they would need to conform at the time of replacement or an addition if there was a house without one.
So this says, for the way I'm reading it, I could be wrong. Decks may not extend beyond the wall of an adjacent neighbor's house addition. For houses that do not have a neighbor's wall on either side, the maximum depth is 10 feet. Okay. Interesting. Okay. I mean,
but to the point, the first point that I asked was which deck are we talking about? And they're talking about a completely new deck, the white deck, not so this whole notion of what would they do, this having exactly the same legacy deck really doesn't come into play here, because the first question I asked was, is that the deck you want? And they said no.
well, and technically though, if the addition is approved, just if we're getting technical, right, then they no longer have sidewalls, and therefore they could build the deck out 10 feet. So I'm just throwing that out there. Technically, then they can go 10 feet. I mean, according to this guideline, which to me, this guideline is super unfair for middle townhouses. I personally did not approve it. I don't, maybe I did. I didn't, it wasn't clear to me that that's what they were requesting. So seems like that severely devalues middle properties, in my opinion, if that's an argument that they're kind of going for. But regardless, that's here. We're not talking about that tonight. But okay, Cam. So we have all that information. So let's go back to the applicant and see if there's any questions. And we'll go from there. Mike, did you have any questions for the applicant or their representative?
No, sir. Thank you.
Jim, did you have any questions?
No.
Karen, did you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Bruce, do you have any questions?
I just wanted to confirm that the community is saying that the applicant did not engage with them on this application, and I wanted to understand what the applicant's view of that was.
So I believe we have made attempts to work with them after the first meeting. Other than the deck standard that was enacted immediately before our meeting, the only comments were maintaining the staggered look and just keeping in line with the existing architecture. So we moved the whole thing back 1 foot, the addition, so that to maintain that staggered look of the existing Chad's Ford architecture. So in that way, yes, we have. Very much so.
You've responded to that part of the concern that they expressed. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I don't have any questions for the applicant at the moment, but I do kind of want to discuss the design overall. So, Mike, did you have any thoughts on the design or the application being presented? Because that's what's before us. We either need to. It's not about a guideline. It's not about what the cluster has. We have to look at this application and then consider that. But we do have an application before us. So. And any thoughts on the overall design, kind of aesthetic, or any final thoughts?
I don't have any thoughts on it specifically, Michael. I think we've kind of beat this one up pretty good at this point. Based on the slide that's up here, again, we are looking at which of the two schemes here?
The one on the left.
Okay.
The original submittal.
Just for clarity, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bruce.
Does the original submittal have the setback that we just talked, that Patrick just mentioned?
Correct. Yes. It is set back 1 foot to keep that staggered look of the architecture. Correct, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Karen, did you have any thoughts on the design?
No.
Okay. Bruce, or not Bruce, sorry, Jim.
Looks like a lot of glass versus the other materials proportion wise.
Yeah, I agree with that comment, Jim. That was exactly what I was going to say. I think glass works when it's for, like, let's say a sunroom, but when it's almost this 3-story, now all of a sudden it's become this 3-story glass box that's completely kind of creating this distinct look that's separate from what the other houses look like. Which to me is not meeting kind of our guidelines for additions. No matter what the standard is at the moment, because there is not one that is approved. It ultimately it lands with us at the moment. I think design wise, I think it's just too much. It's too much glass for kind of that face potentially, because it doesn't look cohesive with the surrounding properties. The deck situation, it's a little bit of a unique situation. Personally, I don't even know if this deck meets the cluster standards from what I can tell. I think it might, because they enacted staff. Do we know if, from a material standpoint, if this deck meets the standards?
I do not believe it. I do not believe that the materials being used meet the standard.
Because it seems like they all kind of require whatever your board is, maybe to match your railing. Yeah, what does that say? What slide is that? Step 71. Composite decking is allowed. composite or vinyl railings with traditional square balusters. But it says, does it say anything about them allowed to be white or? No, so it looks like they need to be. So it looks like the railing doesn't meet the standards. If the deck was to be approved, the railing would obviously not meet it. So I think there's still some things in this addition that would need to be kind of tweaked. I think obviously there's the big elephant in the room with the cluster guidelines and what eventually may come. As of now, there's not one. Personally, I'm leaning towards, unfortunately, a motion of deferral just to restudy the windows because of, I personally don't think it meets the harmonious guideline that we have for kind of additions inside of a cluster. I just think it's too much glass compared to what everyone else has, which is there's pretty standard size windows in the cluster, and they have a pretty good layout in their guidelines for the elevations that kind of show how much solid versus glass there is. If you go to slide like 79, staff, and kind of work your way through that, you can kind of see that the windows proposed don't really meet kind of these different styles that they kind of have within the cluster already. So I think the applicant could explore that as a way to maybe make the addition look like it fits into the cluster architecturally speaking, and less like a full 3-story sunroom. That could be an option. And then also looking at the deck railing to meet cluster guidelines for deck railings, because it currently does not. Other than that, I'm not opposed to an addition 3-story. I think at this moment, I'm not opposed to it. So that's kind of my, I don't think it goes against any guidelines. Like you guys said, it does not at the moment. So, but there's kind of that big elephant in the room, obviously, with the cluster. So anybody willing to make a motion?
My notion, just as one additional observation, is that we have communities that have a very strong preference for unique, each home being unique. We have other communities that have a very strong preference for consistency and maintaining the original architectural elements. And everything we've heard here is that this is a community that's in the latter and wants nothing to do with the former. And we have both. And it seems to me, as the DRB, we have to respect where the community is. Even without even going to the issue of the amending the guidelines, they've been crystal clear that a design that is that different than the community sense of the community that's there, harmonious sense of the community that's there is problematic. So that is, I think, is something that I just can't get past. And my understanding here is that there's been no change in this since our last discussion. In fact, from my point of view, went back one step. So I just don't know how much time we have to devote to this application, given where the community's preference are overall, and that it has moved backwards, not forward, to where the community is.
Okay. Anybody have a motion?
Well, I would make a motion consistent with my last rant there, that I would move that the application be denied.
Okay. We have a motion for denial. Do I hear a second? Do I hear a second? All right, so that motion dies. Do I hear a new motion? What I do, and I don't know if I can do this, but what I'd like to do is motion to defer the application till after the guideline for additions is passed in the cluster before we rehear this. And I think ultimately we're going to side with the cluster just because that's our precedent in Reston. And that's the precedent we're trying to set, is have clusters govern themselves. And I think that'll allow for potentially some further design kind of modifications to maybe bring this thing back and bring it back to the drawing table and see if there's a way to amend the designs that could be appeasable by the cluster. And I would highly suggest the applicant to work with the cluster to help develop that guideline, because it's going to affect them. Get involved and hopefully maybe try to have some say in kind of what that guideline finally looks like when it comes back to us. But I would motion to defer this for further study and not to be reheard until the cluster guideline is finalized. And staff, do you think we should put like a timeline? I don't even know if is Tony still on? Am I even allowed to do that from a deferral standpoint?
You generally don't put a timeline on deferrals because it's conditional on the cluster's action, unless you can't force a cluster to submit an application for a cluster standard either. So it's
so I can't make what I'm doing, is what you're telling me.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, then my motion is invalid at this point. So if somebody needs to make a motion.
I mean, you can make a motion to defer pending additional study with regard to the windows or the additional glass.
So there's a motion to defer for additional study of the glass.
What do we want to look at? What's the study of the glass mean? Excuse me.
I mean, we were talking about it being inconsistent with the adjacent homes in the context of the neighborhood, et cetera, et cetera.
Kind of what the desired approved elevations are for the home. Well, let's see. Hold on. There's a motion on the table. Let me just hear it before we have further discussion. Let me see if anyone's willing to second it. I will second the motion just so we can have some further discussion on it. I think the only downside to the motion would be, I think what Bruce is kind of getting to is, why kick the can down the road? Why not just, I guess the reason why I'd be willing to kick it down the road and let them restudy is because I personally think a 3-story addition is not going to be unharmonious with the design of the community if it's done properly. I think right now it's not designed properly for that community. I think there would be ways to design it so it does incorporate nicely into the community. That's why I would be deferring kind of Bruce from my point of view. So I know I used to have a townhouse that was in a similar situation, and I thought of doing an addition, similar like this. And to me, if I can make it design, if I can feel like I can fit it in with the neighborhood, I should be allowed to submit my application for that. So that's kind of why I'm leaning towards a deferral and letting them kind of restudy, look at the approved elevations, see if there's a way to come to a reasonable addition size and location, whether it takes over half or not, et cetera. So that's kind of why I'm leaning towards the motion to defer and let them to continue to restudy it.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
It would need to be for a date certain. You can't defer it essentially indefinitely in this way. I mean, you could, but you're essentially killing the application. If it's your intent to revisit that, you need to pick a control date to come back to. 3 months, something like that.
And just curious, Tony, if let's say the cluster still has not figured out a guideline in 3 months, then technically we could still obviously move forward with the application and approve or deny it, right? At that juncture.
Absolutely. It's incumbent upon the cluster to move their standard forward in a timely manner.
Okay. So if they haven't done anything, the applicant, if they're ready to resubmit next month, they theoretically, if they've done kind of a new study on it and the application is kind of what they think approvable, they could come back to us.
So is your motion 3 months or 90 days or what do you have a suggestion?
Yeah, let's give it, well, I think Mike actually made the motion.
Yeah, I was going to suggest.
He'd be the one to amend it.
I was going to offer 3 months.
All right, I'll accept that amendment. So the motion, to be clear, is to defer the application for further study to have the applicant look at the approved elevations of the homes in the neighborhood, and look at the window sizes to be more in line with the cluster standards for an addition, and maybe overall size of the addition as well to be more in line with the existing architecture, and have a 90-day period to resubmit if that is their desire. So we have a motion, we have a second, there's an amendment, it was accepted. Time to vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? Bruce or Karen, I don't think I heard your votes.
I was an aye.
Aye, okay. Karen? Karen, you're muted still, real quick. You could unmute just so I get it for the record.
No, I'm opposed.
You're opposed. All right, so motion passes 4-1-0 for a deferral. All right, thank you. All right, I think that's everything. Does anybody have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Do I hear a second? Multiple seconds. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you, guys. Thank you, staff. Thank you for
Have a
your
good
time.
one, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.